All right, good afternoon. Good afternoon. Hope everybody is well. And all of you who have logged in are pretty much caught up on it. So it's kind of a catch up on what you need to catch up there. I have to give the quiz to 4 people. So what I would like to say for those of you, because like I said, the folks those of you who are in already, I believe are already caught up on your AP Classroom and the assignment. So I would just like for you to, I don't want to give another assignment for folks to end up being behind. So, only thing I can say for you all who are already finished with all of your assignment. So again, good afternoon for those of you just joining. If you're just joining, I was saying that the majority of you who are logged in right now have already completed all of your assignments. I need to give time for 4 people to do the makeup quizzes. So those of you who, if you know you've done all of your AP classroom assignments, and that was 3, 4, and 5, I would just like for you to read Canvas. There's a lot of reading to be done. You need to read, let me go ahead and share this. All right, and as soon as I get all 4 of the people I need in, I'm going to assign the quizzes. I don't want to have to keep doing it 3 and 4 times. All right, so if you finish with everything else, hopefully you read population growth before you did 3.5. I put I assigned the video for 3.5 in the AP classroom, as well as the activity for 3.5 in the AP classroom. So make sure you do that, but also come back and look at what the essential question is and what the AP tip is for that, and then go on to read 3.6, because that's where we're going for the next one. So this one has some couple of sections and graphs. So also note that, and then for those of you who were in class at early yesterday, I put, you're going to get graphs, as you can see with the questions for AP Classroom. You're going to get graphs, and sometimes you're going to have to calculate. So they gave you for the exam a reference page, which I said that, and I said that anytime that they send me stuff for you all in regards to the AP exam, I'm going to put it under resources, so that they've given you a worksheet on how to do mathematical problems involving whatever calculations that you might have to do, with some of the questions that they're going to give you as far as the environmental science is concerned. Okay, so just make sure if you're doing the exam that you have taken a look at that. All right, so that being said, let me see who is here that I need. I need Journey, Gabby, Sadie, and Isadora. And I have one of those people. Journey, you're the only one. So Journey, I'm going to give it another minute, and if the others don't show up in a timely fashion, I'm going to let you go ahead and get started doing what you need to do. And that's that. Okay. So again, all right, we just had someone come in. All right, there's one more. All right, there's Sadie. Okay, so 3.5, 3.6. So again, read over 3.5 and 3.6 in Canvas. Just as a backup, we'll have further activities to do with those on Friday. So if you have not completed those activities in 3.5, I did not assign 3.6 in the AP classroom, but do read it in Canvas. So make sure you've done 3.3, 4, and 5 in the AP classroom. That is due. All right, now, so I see Sadie and I see Journey. Okay, so I'm going to give you ladies the codes to do those quizzes that you need to do. So I'm just going to put it in the class chat. So those of you who don't need to do the quizzes, ignore this. This is for Sadie and Journey, but I am going to put it in for everybody. So the rest of you just ignore. Okay. All right. So there were two quizzes. Both of them have 5 questions, very short. And I put the code in as soon as it pops up on my screen. Okay, so this is for Journey and Sadie. That's the code for the first one. As soon as I see you both logged in, I'll start it. And when I think you're almost done, I'll put the code in for the second one. Okay, you're both in. Let's go ahead and start it. By the way, I didn't mean to give the 5 questions. We had reviewed the 10-question quiz, and I accidentally gave the shorter version, but that's okay. Okay, and that's the link for the second one. And again, those links are just for Journey and Sadie. Everybody else, ignore them. Again, everybody else, if you are you're either reading Canvas or you're making sure your AP classroom assignments are done. Okay, Ethan, you're doing it. Okay, and I did start that second one. Okay. I see, William. I see you did this one too. Not a problem. Not a problem. All righty. Cool. Everybody got 100. Great. All right. I will get those added to the grade book. Um, oh, probably shouldn't have closed those out like that. In case we have some late people.
Hey everybody,
Okay. Well, I tell you what I'm going to do. Since everybody has finished that, and we did not watch the AP video 3.5, even though the one I assigned the one in the book. Let's just go ahead and watch the 3.5 um, one in the series that we have.
hey everybody, it's Mr. Smeets, and today we'll be talking about topic 3.5, which is population growth and resource availability. So if you haven't already seen video 3.4, where we talked about carrying capacity, make sure to check out that suggested video link at the top of the screen right now. Since we'll be building on carrying capacity and limiting factors today, it's really important that you've seen that first. Like I said, we've been talking about carrying capacity and how limiting factors like food availability or predation will determine the carrying capacity. But today we'll be going into a little greater depth when it refers to characteristics of populations and how population growth is determined by a variety of factors. So here on the screen, we have an example of a species whose growth is often limited by their own competition. So when deer become too dense in an area, they can exceed the carrying capacity based on the amount of food availability, and they're going to experience a die-off. And we'll talk today in the video about other factors that influence population as well. So let's take a look at our objectives, essential knowledge, and our science practice for the day. Our objective today is to be able to explain how resource availability affects population growth. And we have a couple different essential knowledge points, but they're very simple ones today. The first two just tell us that resources are always limited in an ecosystem, and that these limited resources like food and space will then limit population growth. The third essential knowledge point for today is the idea that population growth and carrying capacity can increase if those limiting resources increase. And we'll look at an example with paramecium and their food resources increasing. And the fourth essential knowledge point today is the opposite of the third. When limiting resources are decreased, there will be a decrease in individuals' ability to survive and reproduce, so the population will drop back down below carrying capacity. Our suggested skill to practice today will be a math skill, and that's applying mathematical relationships to solving a problem. So we'll practice doing that at the end of the video. So first we'll talk about some basic population characteristics that are important to understand before we go into the factors that will limit population growth. So first we have population size. This is really straightforward. It's just the number of organisms in a population, and we'll sometimes denote it or represent it with the letter N. It's important to know that the larger a population is, generally the safer it is from population decline due to factors like genetic diversity, that can allow organisms to adapt to new environmental conditions. And certain species even get protection from predators by having a large herd, and that can be another example of large population size being beneficial. Density is the number of individuals per unit of area. So we have an example here. We could have 12 panthers per square mile or per square kilometer. And generally, the more dense a population becomes, the stiffer the competition for resources and the more likely that a disease outbreak is, since diseases move more easily between individuals in a more dense population. And then finally, we have distribution, and this is just how organisms are spread out in a population compared to one another. So random distribution is typical for plants like trees, who have their seeds dispersed randomly by the wind or by animals. Although it's important to know that some plants will put out defensive chemicals into the soil, which kills other plants in the area. And that would lead to them having what we would refer to as a more uniform distribution. So uniform distribution is typical of these plants that secrete defensive toxins, or of nesting animals or predatory animals that defend a central den or nest area, plus the area around it. Shorebirds are another great example of this. And lastly, we have clumped distribution, and this is going to be typical of animals that live in herds or groups, like these meerkats here. Sex ratio is the last population characteristic we'll talk about today. It's a very important one, though. It's just the ratio of males to females in a population, but it's important to know that generally the closer to 50-50, the more optimal for reproduction. And events that lead to large die-offs or bottleneck events like natural disasters can leave already small populations with really skewed sex ratios. So for instance, if we have a 75-25 ratio of males to females, that population may have a really tough time recovering from that decline because there are so few females, which limits population growth. Next, we'll talk about factors that limit population based on density and factors that limit population independent of density or not based on density. So density-dependent factors are going to limit population growth due to individuals becoming too densely populated. Another way to think of this is as increased competition for food, water, or habitat sets in, we're going to see factors that limit population size. Even disease can be a density-dependent factor because it spreads so much more easily in dense populations. Another way to think about density-dependent factors is if you have a population of 50 deer and a population of 5,000 deer.
a drought that limits tree growth is going to impact that 5,000 deer population a lot more significantly than the 500 deer population. And so we'd say that the impact on population is dependent on density here. So pretty much any resource that's limited from a competition standpoint, so food, water, habitat, nesting site, these are all going to be density dependent because they depend on how dense the population is. Then there are factors that impact population growth independent or not based on density. These are factors like natural disasters, so floods, hurricanes, tornadoes, fires, and it really doesn't matter if a deer population has 50 or has 5,000 members. Natural disasters impact both populations pretty similarly. So now we have an
Oops, commercial time. Nothing is free.
So now we have an experiment that will give an example of a density dependent factor. And food is probably the best example of a density dependent factor because it's going to limit population growth really directly and really significantly. So here we have a really simple yet famous experiment conducted by a Russian biologist named Gregory Gauss. He grew 2 species of Paramecium, which are single-celled organisms, in a petri dish with limited access to food. So we can see in the first graph here that over the first 6 days or so, both species grew very rapidly. So remember, single-celled organisms like Paramecium are going to have a really high biotic potential or a high maximum growth rate under ideal conditions. However, we can see that after day 6 or so, both species are going to arrive at a carrying capacity. So their growth is going to slow, and then eventually they'll reach 0 growth or a stable population size. Then in the second graph, Gauss doubled their food supply and repeated the same experiment. So we see the same trend here. There's going to be rapid exponential growth for those first 6 days or so. And then eventually both species will reach a carrying capacity that limits their growth. This time though, since their food supply was doubled, their carrying capacity was roughly doubled. And that illustrates a really important point, which is that increasing a limiting resource, food in this case, will increase carrying capacity. And it might seem pretty straightforward, but it's a really good example of how limiting resources determine carrying capacity. Now we'll look a little more closely at the model of growth that Gauss's experiment demonstrated. So like I mentioned, over those first 6 days of the experiment, both species grew at what we would call their biotic potential or their maximum growth rate. We also call this an exponential growth. It's very, very rapid because there's no limiting resources, food, space, habitat. None of these things have limited the growth rate of the population yet. However, if we look over at the second graph, what we'll see is that eventually competition, either within your species or with members of another species, for limiting resources like food, water, or space, will slow the growth dramatically until you reach a carrying capacity. We call this model logistic growth, and this is what happens in all natural ecosystems because, as we know, all natural ecosystems have limited resources to some degree. So we're never going to see biotic potential or exponential growth forever. We must hit some limiting resources at some point, and that will establish the carrying capacity. And the last thing we'll do today is practice calculating population size. So this formula here can be used to calculate how factors like birth and death and immigration, new members entering a population, and emigration, members leaving a population, change the population size. So in this case, immigration and birth are the 2 inputs that increase population size, while deaths and emigration are going to reduce population size. An easy formula is to add up the deaths and emigration and then subtract that number from the births and immigration. So see if you can work out the new population size of this elk population here that starts with 52 elk, then has 19 births, 6 deaths, and 5 new elk immigrate into the population in a season. so you can work this out on your own, and then the answer will be on the screen shortly.
Okay, and he's pointing out that it's
So our suggested science
okay,
skill for the day
hold
is
on.
applying a mathematical relationship to solve a problem. So I want you to see if you can calculate the population size of a population. You can work this out on your own, and then the answer will be on the screen shortly.
Oh, oops, it just keeps going so fast. Just trying to hold it so that you could see the worked out answer. All right, so we were talking earlier about having a cheat sheet for doing the math problems. And I'm not getting it to stop where I want it to stop. Huh. There you go. All right, so you do need to make yourself acquainted with this formula of calculating population size. So if you don't have that written down somewhere, you need to do that. And then again, you have word problems. So the word problem will give you a certain set of information, and you'll be expected to plug that into this formula in order to calculate the herd size, in this case, herd size of the population. Okay, so again, this is a formula that you will have to know. All right, I'll let him finish. He wasn't. All right, so then he gave you another one. And rather than let him talk, I'm just going to scoot this along. Okay, he's not giving you the answer to that one. All right, so based on that one, see if you, and this one should be like the one that you had in AP Classroom. So hopefully you answered this question correctly. Okay. All righty. All right, so in the time that's left, just again, make sure that you have done your AP Classroom, that you have read the course module, and you have all your assignments turned in. Gabby, I might have time for you to do one of the quizzes that you missed. Just give me a minute because I closed them out just a minute ago. Okay, you need to be. All right, so he was here. All right, so make sure you go through and look at the graphs that you're able. So now we're getting into a lot of graphs. So you have to make sure that you can read the graphs, understand your S and K curves, understand what carrying capacity is, and be able to use the formulas as needed. Okay. So again, please make sure that you have read that. All right, I'm going to come out of this. Gabby, I'm about to give you a link. Hopefully you can use this same one. I won't have to create a new one. Let's see what that'll do. Okay, hold on. All right, I have to restart that. Because if I go in there, it's going to have it as me instead of you. All right, Gabby, I'm gonna have to give you a new code. So don't use that one, because that one's already closed out. All right, Gabby, try that one. All right, so Journey, you should be working on your AP classroom because I don't have scores for you for that. Ariana left it. Ariana's gone and she didn't do hers either. All right, Gabby, you got the link for. Is that the right one? Yeah. Gabby, where'd you go? Oh my goodness. Yes, Sadie, you're caught up on that. And Sadie, did you do I didn't write your name down. Did you do your AP classroom quizzes? I have to check on that. I don't know how I skipped your name. Okay. That's fine. The time that's left, I only got 2 minutes, but I'm gonna be here for a minute. Gabrielle, where'd you go? Where'd you go? Where'd you go? All right, Sadie, you're good. Journey, you're good. And Journey, you need to do your AP classroom. Other than that, all right, everybody else is good. You all have a great day, and I'll see you on Friday. All right, Gabrielle, I'm gonna hang in here with you, and we'll do at least this one quiz.